take the mic. Hi. I'm from HSBC. Security for our customers, like with most financial organisations, is a real pain point. We're so secure, we make it really difficult. So I'm interested to know I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, but from your perspective.
Himanshu.
Thank you.
Everybody calls me Pikachu, if that's easier.
Pikachu, brilliant. So we use things like, soft tokens
Sure.
to sign on to apps and to online banking. What's the future look like for banks? What is the easiest? What's the best way? What's the recommended way to do it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And, as I mentioned, e-banking sort of like has evolved from, having punch cards to SMS and email-based OTP to now, hardware tokens in some cases, and moving on to phone-based authentication. I think the future is moving towards making the user experience of the end user easier and simpler, but at the same time providing the right level of assurance. I personally are, already seeing some of the large e-banking vendors implementing techniques where you can actually not only receive an acknowledgement of the transaction that is being performed, at the same time you can actually review that information with some additional data points and then simply tap on a screen to either approve or deny the request. Obviously, if it's you, you obviously approve that. If it's not you, you can deny that, which is commonly known as push-based authentication now in the market. Highly, usable and provides great security as well if implemented in the right way. And I think that's where I sort of like focus on is that push-based authentication, again, ties in what is the underlying principles of generating that one-time password. If you're using event-based OTP, then that means you're still leaving holes where somebody can come in, generate a bunch of OTPs, and they're valid until the expiration window, which is usually for 24 hours, and then they can still go and exploit that. Whereas if it's time-based OTP, the window is very limited, and then you're less vulnerable to an attack. The future, obviously, with the extension of smartphones, and especially with biometrics being made easier and simpler, I think the more layers that you can sort of like attach, which is what the principle of multi-factor authentication is to tie in with risk, fraud, as well as some of the biometric traits of the user, is where authentication will be. I personally believe that 10 years from now we will not be talking about passwords at all, right? It's something which has been a pain point for IT administrators for the longest time. But with the emergence of some of these smart devices and easier ways to actually use additional forms of authentication, it will become more and more relevant where passwords cease to exist.
I'm sure, thank you. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Very comprehensive. Okay, I'm going to pose a question to Brett, who sat in America. I don't know what time it's there, about 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
Brett, what is the most important cyber topic that this audience should be thinking about today? The most important.
The most important from a cybercrime perspective, or just for protecting themselves?
From cyber protection, yeah.
For protection, I think that number one is raising awareness among the entire group or company or household or whatever. Time and time again, we see that protecting yourself from these attackers, whether they're skilled attackers or just someone that's committing credit card fraud or whatever. Time and time again, we see that a lot of it happens because someone in the organization is not trained properly on security. Give you an example. So I can pick up a phone, I can spoof a phone number, call in, and when I call in, I talk to the lowest paid, least educated member of that company, usually customer service. I bypass all internet security. When I do that, when I call in, on their screen they show the phone number of the actual card holder or account holder that's on file. That person, that customer service agent, is trained to make me happy. That's their entire goal. Now, if they're not trained on security, if they're not given the latest crimes that are coming around or phishing techniques or anything else like that, the chances of them falling for that social engineering technique that I'm trying to implement at that point is pretty high. I'm a very good social engineer, and it's very easy to get access or information from people like that. But proper training has been shown to decrease the success of social engineering, of hacking, of cybercrime altogether. That I think is number one. That's really all I've got to say about that.
Thanks, Brett. That reinforces
Sure.
the statement I made earlier in the conference about training and education,
Sure.
both for users and the implementers. Absolutely vital. They're the people that can cost your business a lot of money. Next question. Pardon?
Hi, Simon Pascal from Health Shield. The last couple of point you've made is exactly what's hit me. Several of you have mentioned the internal threat as well as the external. The external stuff is fairly easy from my perspective. It's the castle and moat approach, and I think our company is very, very strong on that. Zone Fox, I can't remember your name because it's not in the book. You talked on it a lot about the internal threat. My question really is sort of an open one, but to Zone Fox and to Brent, where would you say was the best starting point for addressing this training issue for internal staff to really get on board with how important it is that they have to take part in the security exercises? It isn't just a firewall thing.
That's a very good question. Training's always been a difficult one, and I think staff in most organisations already have a serious number of training requirements that are put on them. They're already taught all of the organisation's general policies and also the policies amongst their role. So I think it's something that needs to be championed from the very top down. It goes a little bit beyond training, I think. I think it needs to be part of the actual organisation's culture. As you can imagine, it's something that we do from the top down. So from our CEO all the way down through our entire organisation, we are very much sticklers for security, and we champion security as being a thing that is really good to be proud of. Now, that's probably a little bit easier for us because of what we do. We're specifically an insider threat detection company. But it works for us, and I think it's something that should be the MO for most organisations, that it's not just about taking an onboarding process for a member of staff who's already got 10 to 12 training modules to go through as soon as they're in the door. It's not about giving them an extra 2 or 3 modules to do. It's about actually championing security and making sure that absolutely everybody's accountable for it. And there are a couple of organisations now which are doing away with their CISOs, but it sounds like a weird move to make. But what they're doing instead is, instead of having one person responsible for security for the entire company, they're championing it through everyone. So everybody is responsible for security, and they're all held equally to that standard. And I think, in my own opinion, that's probably the way to go.
I think I'd like to add to that. One of the things I've stated in the past, that to make sure CEOs and companies do comply with regulations, comply with policy, that when the company is audited annually, cybersecurity is something that is part of that audit. We audit for human resources, we audit for health and safety, we audit for compliance. But wouldn't it be good if cybersecurity was there and they had to have a positive tick in the box? That would really make CEOs and CSOs wake up and take it very, very seriously.
Can I just add to that as well? So, I think that the best way to do it is to make your staff understand that the practices that they do at home should also come into the workplace. So say to them, if their computer was infected by malicious software and they lost all their family photos that they've had for 10 years, if they were to all go, they'd be absolutely devastated. So talk to them about real life, about when they're at home, about the practices that happen there, and get them to bring that into the workplace. And I think that's when you will start to see the changes. It's not just about giving them loads of stuff about you've got to protect us, you've got to protect the business. It's about protecting us all at home and in the workplace too.
And if I could just add to that as well. So training, and I talked to many different companies, but how is the training being implemented? Are the employees going through the training to get through the training, or are they going through the training to learn? That's one of the big differences there. Time and time again, I speak to companies and they have a training module, or they have a set of, like in the United States, we have HIPAA for healthcare and everything, and they're going through HIPAA training, and time and again, the employees simply go through the videos and go through the test as quickly as possible just to get through the training module. That's not the point of training. We have to get that message across that this is important. There's a reason it's here. We need to. It's like dealing with children. You have to explain why it's important. It's important if you're in the healthcare industry. It's important because, hey, at the end of the day, someone can steal every single file we've got, release it on the dark web, and sell this stuff. In the United States, children are the #1 victims of identity theft. Here in the U.S., 1 in 4, 25% of all kids will be a victim of identity theft. The information, most of it comes from medical files. From what I've seen with my darknet monitoring interactions with law enforcement, most of that of the children's data comes from insiders that are stealing the data and then selling it on the dark web. We have to get to the point where the employees or the household or whoever it is, they're being trained, but they understand the importance of that training. Without understanding the importance, it's just simply a dog and pony show. People are just going through the modules to get through it, to say they passed, and they carry on from that point.
Right, I would add to that, as I said before about cybersecurity, pen testing, other testing, training is not fit and forget. There has to be a rolling program, a rolling education program, and people have to regularly go through the hoop. Now that has a big corporate overhead, but that overhead surely must be a better investment than losing money for not doing it.
Absolutely.
Next question. Oh, we'll hold you next time.
Hello, I was just wondering, do the panel have any thoughts on crowdsourcing of penetration testing capability rather than contracting with a singular firm about sort of using that crowdsourcing approach?
So in terms of bug bounties, that type of thing, yeah. My experience of it, we have clients which use both. So they use bug bounties for depth because you can have an individual trying to get a bounty in effect. In a very deep way. Some vulnerabilities aren't really very detectable via, say, pure automation. But there are some issues which haven't been addressed in my view. I'm going to mention the four-letter GDPR. So if you have you have bug bounty researchers, shall we say, and those guys are legitimately attacking an asset. The thing is that there's no control. So if a bug bounty hunter, in effect, does in effect pull down personal identifiable information onto their own laptop, who's to know how the laptop's configured? Is it encrypted? It's just data that's going into the void, and it's personal information. So I'm not sure if the likes of GDPR or let's forget about GDPR, but even protecting citizens' personal identifiable information it will lend well to, or bug bounty will lend well to that. But in saying that, we find that having individuals, some of them are very, very skilled, looking for deep vulnerabilities, which are complex, is very effective. But then bug bounties, when an asset comes live into a bug bounty program, everybody goes for it, like sort of bees after a honeypot. And then after a while, it tapers off because all the low-hanging fruit is discovered, and people move on to other things because they get paid for bugs, right? So in effect, the idea of continuous assessment in a world where we're deploying code in some cases every hour, every day, etc. I find bug bounties in that case lose a little bit of their traction. So it's sort of there's very much a mixed bag.
Thank you. Question over there.
So Martin Turner from Manchester University. I think in some sense, just coming over here, you've almost had a bit too late once you train staff, because you've already, as American colleagues has already said, it's the next generation which is going to be affected, and the next generation who are automatically going. So how do you get to educate, it's a question for all, so that we can turn people not into black caps, but into white caps for the hacking, I do lots of hackathons to get small kids involved in certain things, and they'll be enthusiastic to be on one side or the other, and I'll just make sure I'm getting them in the right way.
Yeah, thank you. So this is less of a company thing more than a personal thing, but I think what the media's done in a strong way is actually reinforce some of the concepts of data privacy on children. When you look at some of the celebrity leaks that happened last year and some of the data that was lost in that, which was, you know, embarrassing for the people who lost that data, a lot of who we interact with in terms of, you know, like just thought leadership within the community and doing things like scouts and stuff like that, a lot of children then went, actually, should I be backing my phone up to iCloud? And to have that as a question is perhaps the best first step we can do in terms of that younger generation. Is rather than accepting something in front of them as the default, but then going, actually, should I be doing that, is always going to be the first step, because it's exactly the same question you want your employees to ask. Should I be opening that email? Should I be saving my WhatsApp messages? Do I trust the company that's doing that? And I think that's probably how I'd ask that question.
Yeah,
is we're on the path. We just need to reinforce it as they grow older.
And if I can add to that as well, I am that former criminal, that former black hat. Committing crime online is
Easy.
It's how do you change from how do you make a white hat instead of a black hat? For a black hat to commit crime, there's this whole thing of status and euphoria, and there's this huge rush. There's this huge adrenaline rush, knowing that that you're this small guy basically that is taking down a multi-billion-dollar corporation. There's a huge rush to that. Not only that, but within the community of criminals that you're committing crime with, you gain a lot of status by being able to do stuff like that. So it's a big self-esteem booster as well. How do you change that? I think the previous gentleman that was speaking is correct. You have to start young. We are in a society, at least here in the United States, we are in a society where children are raised by the television. Both parents in the United States, they work. The children are often left at home. They're in front of the TV. We have to take an active involvement in raising children. We have to do that. I'm a huge advocate of any adult who breaks the law. They need to serve some time in prison. I served time in prison. It did wonders for me, and I think it would do wonders for them as well. But for children, I don't think that any child ever should be locked away. I think that if a child is, you know, if a parent sees a child downloading pirated software or pirated movies, or maybe the child is trying to get a video game free for Xbox or something like that, I think at that point it takes some mentoring. You have to find someone to mentor the child, especially if the child shows some sort of real skill in that type of environment with computer hacking or something like that. Time and again, we see these high school children that are very adept with computers, and they're trying to hack into their school system or take over things and things like that. We have to get to the point where instead of punishing children, we're taking them under our wings and giving them guidance and mentoring.
Thank you, Brad.
Yes, sorry, just quickly. That's what the Prevent team are doing. They're working with young people to make sure that if they are in school and they're hacking the systems or they're doing anything naughty, that they're referred to us so that we can refer them on. The National Cybersecurity Centre have got really good programmes to channel them in the right direction, because obviously they are our cybersecurity experts of the future. So there is a lot of work going on with that, and I can point you in the right direction if anyone needs any further guidance. Thanks.
Johnny, thanks for that. I have one last question, and it's for you, Brett. Have you ever thought about being naughty again?
When I'll tell you the truth on that. When I first started speaking, I was always I didn't know if it would work. When I started speaking and consulting, I did not know if I would be successful with it. So I was always preparing for failure. I was always in case everything went south and it failed completely, I could go into synthetic fraud, or I could open up one of these darknet marketplaces or something. I never broke the law, but I was always preparing to. Until at one point, Microsoft flies in to see me to offer me a job. About a week after that, I was at home, and it was literally this aha moment. I was sitting there. My wife had went to bed, and it really hit me that I was never going to break the law again. And everyone in the audience, you guys are legal. You know, you guys have been legal all your life. You've never broken the law. Me, or at least I hope not, at least serious. But, you know, it took me 40 some years to get to that point. And now, no, I don't even think about breaking the law. I don't question my ever backsliding at all anymore.
Brett, thank you for that. That
Thank you.
brings to an end our panel session. Some good questions, some very comprehensive answers. Panel, thank you very much indeed for that session. And to you, Brett, back in the States.
Thank you.
We will now break for lunch.